All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining. You're here for today's demonstration of the Geonexus Integration Platform for water utilities. We're going to be focusing on a migration from the geometric to the utility network. My name is Katie Majewski, and I'm a marketing coordinator here at Geonexus, and I'm happy to be joined by Josh Swenson, VP of Revenue Operations, who I brought on to help answer some of the questions you may be having after the end of the demonstration today. Our main focus is going to be on a recorded demonstration where Amelia, our software implementation lead, will walk you through an example configuration setup for a water utility looking to migrate their data from Esri's geometric network to the utility network. She'll also highlight two of the platform's core features, including preview mode and reporting within the demonstration as well. So before we dive into the demonstration, we always like to set a quick foundation of who we are for those of you who may not be familiar. So Geonexus is a software company, and really our main focus is on the simplification of integrations. Almost every organization we talk to these days is either planning on or has already begun their UN migration. And what we're finding is that one of the largest concerns with adoption of the utility network is with system integrations, as well as existing dependency on legacy systems due to custom integrations. The graphic on the screen highlights the full scope of a UN project, but since there are so many different phases to a full UN project, I wanted to quickly highlight where Geonexus specifically helps. So our software tool handles the data migration and integrations aspect of your UN projects. The Geonexus Integration Platform is a fully supported, easy-to-use, proven platform for system integration to make the setup, maintenance, and management of integrations quicker and more efficient. We're brought in at the end of the design phase as a migration tool to help migrate your data from the geometric network to the utility network. However, if you do need help with any of the other phases of the UN project, we do have many partners that are certified UN partners and are happy to make an introduction for you. So there's really three features to the Geonexus Integration Platform. The first is simplified configuration. So within the platform, we provide an easy to navigate user interface with drop-down menu configuration to streamline setup, maintenance, and management of your integrations throughout their entire lifetime. This allows additions or modifications to be made on the fly with no code required. The second is automated synchronization. So once your synchronization is complete and your configuration is complete, we help you automate your processes by allowing you to schedule your synchronization on a specified task. Some choose nightly, weekly, whatever you desire. This will help you continue to streamline your processes and ensure data integrity. Additionally, we can synchronize your data bidirectionally between systems as well, if that's what you'd like. The last is active reporting. So once you've configured everything and you have your synchronization running, we provide in-depth reports to show that everything has run as intended. Some of the benefits reporting can provide are detailed descriptions of any errors, orphans, discrepancies, and more that may have occurred. How we simplify integration even further is through our library of pre-built connectors you can see on the screen below. Each one of these connectors understands the unique business logic of each system and are constantly upgraded to allow you to take advantage of the latest and greatest system features with no fears of system version lock or downtime. So now that you've heard a little bit about Geonexus and how we help for UN projects, we'll get into the demonstration.
All right, so thanks for the handoff. So many of you may be familiar with the layout of the Geonexus Integration Platform and the user interface, but for those of you that aren't, I will take a few seconds to kind of set a baseline. So there's a couple main components of the integration with our platform. which would be mainly the configuration aspect and the automation aspect. So what I'll be going through today is the configuration aspects. So for now, we're going to open our water project at the top of our table of contents. And so just to go through quickly to, again, set a baseline, first we have our console window, and this is how we could run the synchronizer manually, or alternatively on a scheduled task. And then we have our reports tab, which is where all of our PDF reports are shown here. And that shows summaries of each synchronization. And then after that, we have our data sets and other configuration aspects below that. So configuration of the platform flows in a few straightforward steps, beginning with configuring the top level system connections. We can see that we have a Maximo REST connection, an Esri geodatabase connection, and then an Esri UN connection. These connections are easily established with login credentials and host URLs and some other basic information. And now once these are established, we can then move forward and configure data sets, which are comprised of data sources and mapping rules based on how features and entities align with each other, and then what data and fields you would like to synchronize between those entities. For this portion of the demo, I will be focusing on the first data set in the configuration here. This one's called GN-UN, Water Device Control Valve. And so this data set will be used to both load data from a geometric network to the utility network, as well as keep the features aligned while the organization migrates to the utility network. If we look closer at our data set, we can see that we have a source geodatabase data source pointing at a control valve table or feature class. And then we also have a UN water device target data source. And so we can see that we've picked these different values in our dropdowns. We're pointing at our control valve asset group within our water device layer. And then we could also choose an asset type in the dropdown or potentially add several to this where clause if you wanted to point out several. But for now, we're not choosing an asset type. We're just picking a where clause with this text value in here. So a couple of things I'd like to point out within the data source that's related specifically to the utility network. Our platform supports branch versioning. So if I click on this branch version tab down here, that pulls up our branch version screen. And all you have to do is pick the version name, and then you would pick, whether you would like to create the version, reconcile, post, and or delete. And so we can kind of natively handle that functionality here. And then if we click on our associated tab, I just wanted to highlight that one as well. So this version of our software GIP supports associations within the UN. And it's as easy as selecting a name for that attribute, the asset group, the layer, the asset type, and then you would then select your fields, which would all be listed in this dropdown here. So these are all of our associated fields that we could potentially choose. And these other fields are optional. And then lastly, I wanted to show a quick aspect of the tool called calculated values. So if I'm going to my source data source and I click on my calculated value panel, I've got this mapping here called diameter trimmed. And so this is just a very simple example, but powerful example of how the tool can translate values on the fly without having to ask your GIS editor to go clean up a bunch of fields because they have too long of decimals on the end when the UN wants a whole number. So in this example, I'm pointing at my diameter field in the GN or the geodatabase. And then if we open my advanced options here, because it's a numeric field, we are able to transform it by numeric values such as decimal places, rounding, and then this nifty little piece here shows kind of what that value would look like before. So this is how it was coming across without the translation. and then how the utility network really wants to receive that value, which is as a whole number for this example. All right, now that we've had a look at our data sources so far, let's have a quick look at our UN target mappings. So if I open my synchronization rules, I've got my UN target mappings here, and if I click on the create rules, we can see all of our mappings that we would be sending when we create our records into the UN. So we can see that we've set a default value for the asset group. And then if you look at mapping number 2, we can see that we are taking a valve type and translating it to its respective asset type in the utility network. So let me go click on that value list just to show that example. So, oops, this is the one I want. So we're basically reading this valve type field that already existed in the GN, and we're taking these values such as blow off, hydrant, sampling, and we're converting those to what would be asset types in the UN. Of course, you know, if you're in the middle of a GN-UN migration, you know that not everything is straightforward when it comes to how things start in the GN and land up in the UN. But this is just one way that could potentially make everyone's lives easier by being able to take values and kind of translate them on the fly, and we can even push those into the structure of the GN. And so going back to my mappings, we can see my calculated value here with my diameter that's trimmed, as well as the shape information so that when we create this record into the UN, it'll be spatially placed in the right place. I don't have a geotransformation on it right now, but that is something we can also do natively within the software. All right, so I just wanted to show a few nifty out-of-the-box features specific to our platform and choosing us as a productized solution for your integration. So first I want to show the notifications panel. Most of our existing customers really utilize this feature because it puts reports in their inbox without having to go dig for them or find out what happened during last night's run or data load. And I believe the flexibility is understated here because we have the ability to, just with this simple setup of email from address and the email port and things like that, we have the ability to send different projects or data sets to different stakeholders within the organization. We also have the ability to choose the format of the reports, whether you want that zipped up, whether you want the XML version so you can do even more extra digging than just kind of that summary. And then we also have the ability to choose the condition on which you get that email. So maybe you only want to check it out if there's an error. You can set that up. Or maybe you just want it in there no matter what when you wake up in the morning. And so this leads me to the next key feature, which would be the report itself. So this report really serves as a summary of the transactions that occurred during the synchronization. And it can be fed into visualizers such as Power BI or other dashboards. The reporting functionality of the platform really saves database managers and IT managers a considerable amount of time because there's no digging or debugging involved. If you've got any errors, those are transparently reported here, and any data changes will also be stored in this PDF format. So as we can see in this report, all of this attribution for each of our creates, as well as our key field, are transparently reported here, and these reports can even be used for auditing purposes once they are run. And so as we can see in this report, this was run on preview mode, which is a great segue to my next point. So preview mode is one of those features that you didn't know you needed until you have it. Usually from what I understand, integration or data loading between systems is driven by custom codes. And if there's a mistake, it can be pretty painstaking to figure out what went wrong, where it went wrong, and then try to even reverse the damage after that. So via preview mode reports in GIP, which I'll show you how to turn on here, we're basically able to visualize and conceptualize exactly what changes will be made during the run and make changes to the configuration as needed and accordingly. So I have a anecdote from a recent customer that was using GIP to load data from the geometric network to the utility network. And not only did this run show, a great sample of what would happen if we ran it in commit mode, right? If we pushed all that data, what would it look like? But that preview mode run also actually revealed some issues with the way they had set up some fields in the UN. So, of course, they probably would have figured that out down the line. But using this preview mode, not only could we just look at the data, but we could also look at the fields and say, oh, maybe the way that's landing there isn't quite right because we don't have the field set up properly. And so they were able to go fix their mistake, run the preview mode again, and then see it kind of real time, like, okay, now that that's resolved, that looks good. And so, double checking those target UN layer fields, that's just another kind of side benefit of using these preview mode reports to visualize what your data loading or synchronization would look like. There are a lot of more features to show, but unfortunately a limited time. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or just reach out to us directly.
All right. Now we'll open it up for questions. Again, just as a reminder, I brought in Josh Swenson to help me answer some of your questions. But while I give you guys time to type in your questions, I want to mention that we're going to be hosting these monthly. And they're really to try to be beneficial for you and dive into some of the specific use cases we hear requested in our daily conversations. So please feel free to recommend any topics in the chat, or there will be a survey afterward asking for any topic recommendations, and we would love to hear what you'd like to see in the next demonstration. So I'll turn it off to Josh. Thank you so much.
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Katie. There was one question that came in. It was kind of a more of a universal question around the UN, but there's a question about how many utilities at this point have implemented the UN. Hard question for us to answer specifically, but I can give you a more general answer. I would say that it's not a ton. We talk to utilities every single day. We're talking to multiple utilities, both within our customers and then with organizations that are looking at integration projects, which are also included in some of the UN projects, right? And so we do have a view into how utilities on the whole are kind of tracking towards the UN. I would say I can't give you a percentage. But I would say that it's in the lower, probably 20% that have been successful. A lot of people are in planning right now. In terms of the move to the UN, there are a lot of UN plans. I think one of the things we saw to maybe answer the question a little deeper is right when there was the announcement of the UN and the timeline was announced for the need to move to the UN, there was a lot of urgency around these projects and moving to the UN. One of the things that we've seen is that as that timeline has moved out, and I'm sure that everybody's aware of what I'm talking about there, those projects have slowed, but we have seen in recent months the move to the UN projects have started to pick back up again. So again, I can't give you an exact number on how many utilities have moved. I would say that it's kind of lower than 20% at this point, but the sense of urgency around getting those projects set up and the project plan set up is definitely picking up pace at this point. Other questions? Have you done any electric utilities with UN yet? No specific project there to speak of. We have, again, back to my last answer, it's still early days. We are working with several on plans there. And again, to be clear, one of the things that Katie has touched on there is we're not really working on the design portion of things. That's not where Geonexus is focused. We're not really focused on the consulting work or the services work there around UN design projects. We're typically partnering with organizations that focus on the design and then using our platform to do simple migrations when they're there, right? The migration of data from the GN to the UN. And then our focus has really been, again, using our Esri connector to integrate between the GN and the UN, right? And so, that's really where we've been focused there, is on the integration between the GN and the UN and keeping those two systems aligned as we moved. I'm just looking at the different questions here. Valerie, I see your question. I think that I've answered that a little bit. We can dig deeper into your specific use case. I know that we've talked to you in the past. Yeah, I mean, if you're an electric utility that's thinking about the UN, we can definitely have the conversation when we talk about, how we're not doing the design portion of things. If you're in the planning phases and if you're thinking about how this needs to be lined up, we're definitely happy to, to have the discussion and show you a little bit deeper. Amelia did a great job of showing how the platform helps here. We're definitely interested in having a discussion about your specific use case, your specific data needs, and how we might be able to help. And so I guess the reason that I'm offering that is if you're just in kind of the planning phase and you're thinking about integration, I don't want you to think we're not going to have a conversation with you about how we might be able to help there just because we don't necessarily focus on the design work. So we can definitely help you figure out how integration, potentially migration fits into your overall project. And so Valerie, thanks for the specific question. We'd be happy to dig deeper with you there. I'm just looking through other questions. There's a question around a remediation process to correct the data errors in the GN that needs to be correct before moving to the UN. Colin, we can follow on offline. I'll need to dig deeper with our implementation specialist on that one, and we can provide you with an answer offline on that. And so I will come back to you with an answer there. And then excellent. Yeah, I think that's it for the questions as I come through it. Any last questions before we go? Hopefully this has given you a good understanding of how you can use the Geonexus Integration Platform as you're thinking of your move, thinking about your move to the UN. And we can do that. It looks like I'm reading one last question about an integration platform demo for electric. If that's a request, that's definitely something that we can take on. Yes, we've done this. This is specific to water utilities. It's the data that we had loaded up for the demo. George, I see your question. That's not something that we're going to do today. We don't plan to have a demo for electric today. We can take that and, one of the things that we're doing with this series is we're trying to provide overview of the platform on a monthly basis. Sometimes it's every 6 weeks. And we're always open to what you'd like to see. And so let us line that up and let us see what we can do there and kind of show off that specific use case. And we'll come back with one of our future demos to do that. So great questions. We appreciate your time. Katie, I'll turn it back over to you to kind of close out.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for addressing those questions for me. So here's our information. If you have any specific questions or would like a personalized demo, I did see that electric GN integration demo topic recommendation. So I will put that on the queue and see what we can do upcoming to accommodate that. But again, there will be a survey after the demonstration. If you have any additional questions or topic suggestions there, excuse me. But thank you so much for your time today, and we'll see you next month for our next demo.